The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my sister Claire spin in her designer dress, her engagement ring catching the chandelier light like a tiny supernova. The country club's ballroom hummed with congratulations, air kisses, and the particular brand of laughter that only comes from people who've never known real struggle. I shouldn't have come, but Mom had insisted, and after 3 years of missed birthdays and holidays, I owed her this much. So here I stood in a borrowed sundress that felt like a costume, my shoulders unconsciously squared in a way that screamed military to anyone who knew what to look for. Except nobody here was looking at me. Not really. "Sarah? There you are, sweetheart?" Mom's voice cut through the crowd, pitched high with the nervous energy she always carried when Dad was in the room. "Your father was just telling the Hendersons about Claire's wedding plans." I followed her gaze to where Dad held court near the bar, his salt and pepper hair still regulation short, his navy dress blues immaculate despite being retired for 5 years. Captain Robert Mitchell, decorated war hero, commander of men, breaker of daughters. "Ah, there's my other girl," he boomed, bourbon already warming his voice. The circle of admirers parted to include me, their smiles polite but puzzled. I was the anomaly in the Mitchell family portrait, the daughter who didn't inherit his charm or Claire's beauty or Mom's social grace. "You all remember Sarah," Dad continued, gesturing with his tumbler. "She gave the military a try too, didn't quite work out." The words hung in the air like unexploded ordnance. Mrs. Henderson touched her pearls. "Oh, how nice that you tried, dear. Not everyone is cut out for that life." "She washed out of basic training," Dad added, each word a precision strike. "Twice, actually. Some people are warriors and some—" He let the sentence dangle, his eyes finding mine across the Persian rug. "Well, we can't all be heroes." My phone vibrated against my hip. Once, twice. The specific pattern that meant only one thing. But I didn't move, didn't even breathe differently. 3 years of training had taught me to hide everything behind a mask of calm. "At least Claire knows her strengths." My stepmother Jennifer chimed in, her voice honeyed poison. "A good marriage, a beautiful home, that's a different kind of success, isn't it, Sarah? More achievable." The Henderson's son, a soft-bodied investment banker, perked up. "Are you single, Sarah? I have a friend." "She's between jobs," Dad interrupted. "Again, can't seem to stick with anything. First the Army." "Navy," I corrected quietly. "Then that security guard position. Now what is it? Personal trainer?" He laughed, the sound echoing off the marble floors. "She's still finding herself at 28. Claire had her life together by 22. My phone buzzed again, insistent now. In my peripheral vision, I caught movement by the entrance. Someone in dress blues standing at perfect attention. They'd been there for 15 minutes, unnoticed by the champagne-drunk crowd. Only I had clocked them the moment they arrived, catalogued the ribbons I could see from here, noted the way they kept checking their watch. "You know," Dad continued, warming to his audience, "I tried to get her into intelligence work, had connections at Langley, but she insisted on combat roles." He shook his head with theatrical disappointment. "I told her from day one, you don't belong on a SEAL range, Sarah. Leave that to the real operators." But she wouldn't listen. Stubborn. Gets that from her mother. Mom flinched beside me. Claire laughed nervously, trying to redirect the conversation to wedding flowers. But Dad was in full performance mode now. "The instructors called me, professional courtesy, said she couldn't hack the physical requirements. Too emotional, too soft." He drained his bourbon. "I wasn't surprised. I've seen 1,000 sailors. You can tell in the first 5 minutes who has it and who doesn't." "Robert," Mom whispered, "please." "What? I'm just being honest. Sarah knows I love her, but love doesn't mean lying to spare feelings. The SEALs are for the elite, the best of the best. Not everyone can be special." The figure by the door shifted, and I saw the eagle on his collar catch the light. A captain. Same rank Dad retired at, but the ribbons, I squinted, recognizing the distinctive blue and white of a distinguished flying cross, the bronze star, and my breath caught the distinctive red, white, and blue of a silver star. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady as a sniper's breathing. "I need to use the ladies' room." "Running away again?" Dad called after me. "That's what you do best, isn't it?" The laughter followed me across the ballroom, a tide of derision that should have drowned me. Should have. 3 years ago, it would have. But I wasn't the same girl who'd fled this room in tears the night before basic training, Dad's words echoing in my ears. Don't embarrass the family name. The captain intercepted me before I reached the hallway. Up close, I could see the sealed trident on his chest, the combat action ribbon, the Purple Heart. His eyes were kind but urgent. Commander Mitchell? His voice was barely above a whisper. I apologize for interrupting your leave, ma'am, but Admiral Chen needs you immediately. There's a situation. I felt the familiar ice-water clarity flood my system, washing away the civilian softness. How bad? Category 1. The team is already mobilizing. We have a helo standing by at the private airfield. Your dear is on board. I glanced back at the ballroom, at my family's glittering world where worth was measured in marriage proposals and trust funds. Dad was already telling another war story, the one about the torpedo that nearly sank his destroyer. Claire was showing her ring to another circle of admirers. Mom was smiling that brittle smile that meant she was counting the minutes until she could take a Xanax. None of them had noticed the captain. None of them ever noticed the things that mattered. Give me 30 seconds? I told him. I walked back into the ballroom with a different gait. Not the uncertain shuffle of Captain Mitchell's disappointing daughter, but the measured stride of someone who'd learned to move through hostile territory. The crowd parted unconsciously, some primitive instinct recognizing a predator among the prey. I have to go, I told Mom, kissing her cheek. She smelled like Chanel No. 5 and resin, but you just got here. Sarah's probably late for her shift at the gym, Jennifer said sweetly. Minimum wage doesn't wait for anyone. I smiled at her, the kind of smile I'd learned in Siri school when they were trying to break me. You're right, Jennifer. I do have work to do. Dad raised his glass in mock salute. There she goes again, can't commit to anything, not even her sister's engagement party. I paused at the door, my hand on the brass handle. The captain stood at attention beside me, waiting. The next words were mine to choose. I could tell them everything. About the trident ceremony they'd never attended, the missions they'd never know about, the lives I'd saved while they were debating wine pairings. Instead, I said simply, Congratulations, Claire. I hope you get everything you deserve. Then I walked out of their world and back into mine, where shadows had substance and silence spoke volumes. My phone buzzed one final time as the captain opened the door of the black SUV. A message from Admiral Chen. Package located. You're the only one who can do this. As we pulled away from the country club, I caught my reflection in the tinted window. For just a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back, scarred, serious, steady. I'd learned that night that respect wasn't inherited or demanded or performed at cocktail parties. It was earned in places they'd never dare to go, paid for in currencies they couldn't comprehend. The captain cleared his throat. Ma'am? The briefing materials are in the folder beside you. Also, he hesitated. I served under your father once, 15 years ago. I'm sorry, I said automatically. No, ma'am. I mean, he was a good sailor. But what I've read about your operations... He met my eyes in the rearview mirror. You're something else entirely. I opened the classified folder, already shifting into mission mode. Dad's words echoed one last time before I shut them away. You don't belong on this SEAL range. No, I thought, studying the satellite photos of our target. I don't belong on your range. I built my own. And every record you ever set, I've already broken. The helo's rotors thundered above me, but my mind drifted back, the way it always did during these moments before a mission. Back to where it all began. Not in some recruiter's office or on a parade ground, but in a small bedroom in base housing, where a 12-year-old girl learned that love could be conditional, and respect had to be earned with blood. I was 7 the first time Dad took my brother Danny to the firing range. Boys need to learn young, he'd said, ruffling Danny's hair while I stood in the doorway, invisible. Mitchell men are warriors. It's in our blood. What about Mitchell women? I'd asked, clutching my stuffed dolphin. He'd looked at me then with something between pity and disappointment. Mitchell women marry warriors, sweetheart. They keep the home fires burning. But I didn't want to tend fires. I wanted to walk through them. Every Sunday after that, I'd watch from Mom's kitchen window as Dad's truck pulled away, Danny bouncing in the passenger seat, heading for adventures I couldn't share. Mom would find me there, face pressed against the glass, and pull me away to help with Claire's hair, or learn to fold napkins into swans for future dinner parties I'd never want to host. "Your father loves you," she'd say, the same way she said it every time. "He just has different expectations for his son." Different expectations? That became the theme of my childhood, a symphony of almosts and not quites, of watching Danny receive praise for hitting targets I wasn't allowed to aim for. The night Dad deployed for his third tour, I snuck into his study. His Navy manual sat on the desk, thick and forbidden. By flashlight, I memorized every page. Physical fitness standards, combat tactics, leadership principles. If I couldn't go to the range, I'd bring the range to me. I started with push-ups, just 5 at first, my 7-year-old arms shaking. Then 10. 20. By the time Dad came home 8 months later, I could do 50 perfect ones. I demonstrated in the living room, desperate for his approval. "That's nice, honey," he'd said, barely glancing up from Danny's baseball trophies. "But maybe spend that energy on gymnastics? Much more appropriate for a young lady." Appropriate. That word followed me like a shadow through middle school, high school, through every moment I chose, running over shopping, weights over parties, discipline over the easy rebellion of my peers. My bedroom became a secret training ground. Pull-up bar hidden in the closet, sandbags under the bed. I'd run the base perimeter at 4 a.m. when no one could see me, when no one could tell me it wasn't appropriate. Mom found me once, freshman year of high school, blood on my knuckles from the makeshift punching bag I'd hung in the garage. "Sarah, what are you doing to yourself? Getting stronger?" "For what?" "You're scaring me. This isn't normal. Neither is being invisible in your own family." She'd gone quiet then, and I saw it, the flicker of recognition. She knew, she'd always known, but knowing and doing something about it were different battles, and Mom had surrendered hers long ago. Danny, to his credit, tried to include me. He'd sneak me his training manuals, describe what Dad taught him at the range. But even his kindness carried pity. The particular type reserved for someone reaching for something everyone else knew was impossible. "Why do you keep pushing this?" he asked once, finding me doing rifle drills with a broomstick at midnight. "Dad's never going to. I'm not doing this for Dad anymore." And I wasn't. Somewhere between the 1,000th push-up and the 100th rejection, my motivation had shifted. It wasn't about earning his approval. It was about proving his limitations. Senior year. Military recruiters set up tables in the cafeteria. Army, Air Force, Marines. And there, at the end, Navy. I walked past the others, straight to the sailor with eyes that had seen real combat. "I want to be a SEAL," he'd laughed. Not cruel, just surprised. "That's ambitious. Have you considered intelligence? Cyber warfare? Plenty of opportunities for women." I said SEAL. "Look, I admire the enthusiasm, but the combat exclusion is being lifted next year. I've done my research. I'll start in a rate that feeds into NSW. I'll be ready when the door opens." He studied me then, really looked, saw the calluses, the muscle definition barely hidden under my oversized hoodie, the look in my eyes that he'd probably seen in a mirror. "Your parents support this decision?" "I'll be 18 in 3 months. Their support is optional." The papers sat in my backpack for weeks, waiting. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, but really I was gathering courage for the war I knew would come. It came at dinner on a Tuesday, pot roast night. Claire chattering about prom dresses, Danny home from college, Dad holding court about his latest consulting contract with defense contractors. "I enlisted today." The silence hit like a sonic boom. Fork suspended halfway to Dad's mouth. Mom's hand frozen over her water glass. Claire's mouth open in a perfect O. "You, what?" Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. "Navy, I ship out in June." "Absolutely not. I'll call the recruiter. This is done, signed, legal." He stood so fast his chair scraped against the hardwood. "You stupid, stubborn girl. Do you have any idea what you've done? The Navy isn't a game. It's not one of your little fitness challenges." "How would you know what my challenges are?" The words erupted, years of silence breaking like a dam. "When have you ever paid attention to what I can do?" "I've paid enough attention to know you'll wash out in a week. You think because you can do some push-ups you're ready for the military? You'll embarrass yourself. You'll embarrass me." "Then it's a good thing I didn't enlist as a Mitchell." Another silence, heavier. Mom gasped. Claire started crying. but I held Dad's stare, watched the rage cycle through surprise into something worse, dismissal. You used your mother's maiden name? Each word dripped disgust. Fine. When you fail, and you will fail, don't come crying to me. Don't expect me to make calls, pull strings, fix your mistakes. You want to play soldier? You're on your own. I've always been on my own. I left the table, left my untouched plate, left the family I'd never quite belonged to anyway. In my room, I pulled out the one photo I kept hidden. Not of Dad in his dress blues or Danny at his commissioning, but of Rear Admiral Grace Hopper. A woman who'd programmed computers when women weren't supposed to understand math. Who'd climbed ranks when women weren't supposed to lead. I taped it inside my locker at boot camp. Looked at it every morning at 4:30 when the instructors were screaming. When my body screamed louder, when Dad's voice echoed in every insult. Not strong enough. Not tough enough. Not enough. But Grace stared back, steady and sure, and I heard a different voice. My own. Quiet but unbreaking. I am exactly enough, and that's just the beginning. The helicopter banked sharply, pulling me back to the present. The captain was saying something about the insertion point, the asset we were extracting, the timeline that left no room for error. I nodded, already in the zone, already becoming the operator they needed. But part of me stayed in that memory, with the girl who'd built herself into a weapon not out of rage or revenge, but out of the simple, revolutionary act of believing she could. I chose the uniform not to prove him wrong, but to prove myself right. In the teams, in the shadows, in the spaces between heartbeats when decisions meant lives, there, your last name was just letters on a dog tag. Your worth was measured in lives saved, missions completed, promises kept, and I'd kept every promise I'd ever made to that girl in the mirror, the one who refused to accept that her dreams were inappropriate. The crew chief held up 5 fingers. 5 minutes to target. I smiled, cold and certain. Let's see what inappropriate looks like with a rifle in her hands. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. I'd just returned from a successful operation in Eastern Europe, 48 hours of no sleep, a bullet graze on my shoulder that I hadn't reported, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from carrying more than just tactical gear. My team was celebrating at the base bar, but I'd retreated to my quarters, craving silence more than camaraderie. That's when I saw it. Official Navy letterhead on my desk, forwarded from command. The return address made my blood run cold. Captain Robert Mitchell, Ret. My hands didn't shake as I opened it. 3 years in special operations had taught me to control every involuntary response, but reading his words was like taking shrapnel, slow, deep, inevitable damage. Dear Admiral Morrison, I write to you with concerns about Lieutenant Sarah Blake, née Mitchell. As her father and a fellow naval officer, I feel obligated to share insights that may assist in her career placement. While I admire my daughter's persistence, I must be candid about her limitations. Throughout her youth, she displayed concerning patterns of obsessive behavior and inability to accept realistic assessments of her capabilities. Her insistence on pursuing combat roles stems not from genuine aptitude, but from unresolved psychological needs for validation. I respectfully suggest she would better serve the Navy in intelligence analysis or administrative positions, where her enthusiasm could be channeled more appropriately. The physical and psychological demands of special operations require a certain type of individual, one capable of rational decision-making under pressure without emotional interference. Having commanded men in combat, I recognize the burden of leadership includes making difficult personnel decisions. I trust you will consider this input as you evaluate her future assignments. Respectfully, Captain Robert Mitchell. The paper crumpled in my fist before I realized I'd moved. Each word was a masterpiece of condescension wrapped in paternal concern. He'd actually done it, reached across years of silence to sabotage me with surgical precision. But it was the response that broke something inside me. Admiral Morrison's handwritten note at the bottom. Lieutenant Blake, thought you should see this. Your father's letter has been filed exactly where it belongs, in the trash. Your actions speak louder than his words ever could. Keep making us proud, Morrison. The kindness hurt worse than the betrayal. I stood in my quarters holding evidence of 2 truths: that my father would never stop trying to diminish me, and that I'd already become someone beyond his reach. The second truth should have been enough. Should have been victory. It wasn't. That night, I pulled out the last photo I'd kept, Dad pinning his trident on my chest at age 5, playing dress-up in his study. His smile genuine then, before I'd grown old enough to disappoint him. Before I'd committed the sin of wanting my own wings instead of living under his. I lit the match with steady hands, watched his face curl and blacken, decades of hurt turning to ash. The smoke detector chirped, but I didn't care. Let it scream. Let the whole base know that Lieutenant Sarah Blake was burning her past. My secure phone buzzed. Admiral Chen's number, the kind of call you didn't get at 2300 unless the world was ending or beginning. Blake, my voice came out razor sharp. Lieutenant, I hear you've had an interesting day. Sir? Morrison shared your father's letter with me, wanted my input given my oversight of special programs. A pause. I knew your father, served under him briefly. My jaw clenched. I see. Good officer, terrible judge of potential. Another pause. Waited. I have a proposition. There's a selection process starting next week. Invitation only. No official designation. The kind of program that doesn't exist until it needs to. What kind of program? The kind where names like Mitchell or Blake don't matter. Where the only currency is capability. Where we push operators past what they think is possible into what's necessary. His voice dropped. The kind of program your father couldn't have imagined, let alone qualified for. The ashes of Dad's photos scattered across my desk. Send me the coordinates. I haven't told you the casualty rate. Does it matter? Or that it's voluntary termination only? Once you're in, send me the coordinates. A low chuckle. They said you were like this. All right, Blake, check your secure terminal in 10 minutes, and Lieutenant, leave the past in that ashtray. Where you're going, it's just dead weight. The line went dead. I stood in the darkness, smoke still curling from the destroyed photo, and felt something fundamental shift. For years, I'd been fighting to prove Dad wrong, but somewhere between his letter and Chen's call, the axis tilted. I wasn't fighting against him anymore. I was fighting for something bigger, for every girl who'd been told she didn't belong, for every dream dismissed as inappropriate, for the pure, clean truth that excellence needed no approval. My fingers flew across my phone. Emergency contact, changed from Robert Mitchell father to none. Delete. 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 Every photo where I stood trying to fit into his shadow, gone. The screenshots of his rare proud moments I'd saved like breadcrumbs of validation, erased. The voicemails I'd kept from after successful missions, his grudging, I suppose you did well, permanently removed. Then I opened my mission logs. Every operation I'd completed, every life saved, every record broken. The real measure of who I'd become. My finger hovered over the delete button for these too. Start completely clean. But no, these weren't about him. They'd never been about him, even when I'd thought they were. The next morning, I walked into Commander Torres's office before dawn. I want every high-risk training evolution you have scheduled for the next month. She looked up from her coffee, eyebrows raised. Blake, you just got back from demolitions, combat diving, Halo, SEER Level C, mountain warfare, urban assault. If it has a mortality waiver, I want in. That's insane. Your body needs recovery time. No one does all those back to back. No one has before. Doesn't mean no one can. She studied me, saw something that made her lean back. What happened? I got clarity. This about that letter Morrison mentioned? No, it's about the fact that I've been playing defense when I should have been on offense. I've been trying to meet standards when I should have been setting them. I placed my list on her desk. Every school, every qualification, every barrier they said women couldn't break. I want them all. Blake, Sarah, you don't have to prove. I'm not proving anything. I'm becoming something. There's a difference. Torres picked up the list, whistled low. If you do this, all of this, you'll either be dead or the most qualified operator in naval special warfare. Then I better not die. She shook her head but pulled out the forms. Your funeral. Literally, possibly. First evolution starts Monday. Underwater demolition in December in Alaska. Water temperature just above freezing. Perfect. As I signed waivers that essentially absolved the Navy of responsibility for my likely death, I thought about Dad's letter. Emotional interference. Obsessive behavior. Inability to accept realistic assessments. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was obsessive. Maybe I couldn't accept his version of realistic. But as I walked out of Torres's office, enrollment in 6 months of hell confirmed, I realized something beautiful. I didn't care what he thought anymore. The opinion of a man who'd never imagined what I could become held no weight in the world I was building. That night, I stood on the beach where Bud's candidates rang out, where dreams went to die and legends were born. The ocean stretched endless and dark, indifferent to rank or name or fathers who couldn't see past their own limitations. I won't send him reports anymore, I whispered to the waves. I'll send signals from positions he never knew existed, from depths he never dared to reach, from heights that would make his vertigo spin. And when he hears about them, because he will, because excellence echoes, he'll know they came from the daughter he tried to bury, the one who dug herself out with her own scarred hands and built wings from the dirt. Monday came fast and brutal, ice water like liquid knives. But I smiled as I submerged, tasting salt and freedom. The transformation had begun. The trident pinning ceremony happened at 300 in a location that doesn't exist on any map. No cameras, no family section, no proud parents wiping tears. Just 6 of us who'd survived what the instructors only referred to as the selection. A program so classified that our original Bud's class records had been retroactively altered to show we'd failed out. Admiral Chen himself pressed the gold trident into my chest, driving the pins through dress blues into flesh until blood spotted the pristine white fabric. An old tradition. A blood pinning. The pain was nothing compared to what we'd endured to earn it. "Lieutenant Blake," he said quietly, "welcome to a brotherhood that includes sisters now. Your call sign? Ghost, sir?" He smiled. "A rare thing. Fitting. You move like one. Strike like one, and as far as the rest of the world knows, you are one." That was 3 years ago. 3 years of operations that would never make history books in countries we were never in, saving lives that couldn't acknowledge we existed. Somalia, extracting an ambassador's daughter from militants who didn't know American women could be operators. They'd laughed when I walked into their compound. Right until I walked out with their leverage and their intel, leaving only unconscious bodies and destroyed weapons. No killing. I'd insisted on that. Death makes martyrs. Humiliation makes examples. Syria, 36 hours in a sniper hide waiting for one shot that would prevent a massacre. My spotter, Rodriguez, had whispered, "You sure you can make this? It's 1,400 meters in crosswind." "I've made harder shots," I'd replied, thinking of all the impossible targets I'd hit. Dad's expectations, society's limitations, my own doubts. The target dropped clean. 63 civilians lived because I didn't miss. Afghanistan, infiltrating a compound dressed in local garb, my Pashto flawless from months of obsessive study. The intel I gathered prevented 3 coordinated attacks. My language instructor at DLI had said I learned like someone possessed. He was right. When you've spent your whole life translating rejection into motivation, picking up new languages is just another form of transformation. Each mission ended the same way. Debrief in windowless rooms. Medals and commendations locked in a safe that required 3 keys to open. Classifications so deep that my own military record showed me stationed at a desk job in Virginia. Meanwhile, 2,000 miles away, my family lived in a different reality. Claire's Instagram told their story in Valencia filtered vignettes. Her wedding photos, me absent, explained away as Sarah couldn't get leave from her admin position. Dad's retirement party where he'd toasted his legacy, mentioning Danny's promotion, Claire's pregnancy, and absolutely nothing about his eldest daughter. Mom's birthday dinner where my empty chair was occupied by Claire's purse, as if I'd been fully erased. Danny texted occasionally, "How's the desk job? Dating anyone?" Dad asked if you're still in the Navy. I'd respond with careful truths. Busy. No time for dating. Still serving. He had no idea that busy meant a halo jump into hostile territory at 200. That no time for dating was because relationships required honesty I couldn't give. That still serving meant my blood type was on speed dial in 3 different combat zones. My ex Marcus had moved on spectacularly. His engagement announcement popped up on social media the same day I received the Silver Star for actions in classified location. He'd written, "Finally found a woman who puts family first and doesn't have commitment issues." I'd laughed alone in my quarters, holding a medal I couldn't tell anyone about for saving 22 lives he'd never know existed. Commitment issues. If only he knew I'd committed so completely to becoming exceptional that I'd erased myself to do it. The loneliness was real. Brutal sometimes. Success tastes different when you can't share it, when your teammates know you only by call sign, when your greatest achievements are measured in redacted files and need-to-know briefings. But there was freedom in invisibility too. No expectations except the ones I set. No disappointing anyone because no one knew there was anything to be disappointed about. I became exactly who I was meant to be, unobserved and unimpeded. The Wall of Honor at Dam Neck displays the names of naval special warfare operators who died in service. There's another wall, in a room that requires special clearance to enter. No names there, just stars. Each one representing an operator who died in missions that never happened. I stood before it after one particularly close call, studying those anonymous stars. We'd lost Thompson in Yemen, good operator, better friend. His star would join the others. His family told he died in a training accident. Heavy, isn't it? Master Chief Williams had appeared beside me, silent as smoke. The weight of being forgotten. We're not forgotten, I'd said. We're just remembered differently. Your father know what you do? The question had caught me off guard. Williams never asked personal questions. No, Master Chief. My daughter doesn't know either, he'd said quietly. Thinks I'm a procurement specialist. Boring desk jockey. She's ashamed of me. Wants me to be more like her friend's dad who's a corporate lawyer. He'd touched one of the stars. Rodriguez here. His kids thought he was a cook. Died thinking their dad made omelets for admirals. Why are you telling me this? Because I see you, Blake. See how you push. See how you volunteer for every shit mission, every impossible shot. You're trying to fill a hole that can't be filled with medals no one will see. I'm doing my job. You're doing everyone's job. You've qualified on every weapon system we have. Speak 7 languages. Have more commendations than operators with twice your time. What are you trying to prove? Nothing. I'm trying to become. Become what? I'd thought about it, standing in that room of anonymous heroes. Become someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Ever again. He'd nodded slowly. Then you're closer than you think. The question is, will you recognize it when you get there? That conversation haunted me through the next months of operations. Each mission blurred into the next. Extract, eliminate, gather, ghost in, ghost out. My jacket grew thicker with classified commendations. The safe ran out of room. Command wanted to put me up for the Medal of Honor after Sudan. I'd refused. That's insane, Colonel Harris had said. You saved an entire peacekeeping delegation. 37 people are alive because of your actions. It needs to stay classified. We can redact the details, focus on, sir, with respect, I don't want it. The work is enough. He'd stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Blake, this is the Medal of Honor. Career-defining, life-changing, fame, recognition, validation. I don't need validation. And saying it, I'd realized it was true. Somewhere between Dad's letter and that moment, I'd stopped needing anyone's approval. The girl who'd done push-ups for attention had evolved into a woman who declined the nation's highest honor because the mission mattered more than the medal. That night, I'd called Mom. First time in a year. Sarah, oh my God, honey, how are you? Are you eating enough? Your father said. I'm good, Mom. Really good. Are you happy? The question had surprised me. Not are you successful or are you dating, but are you happy? Yeah, I'd said, watching the sun set over the Atlantic from a base that didn't exist. Yeah, Mom, I'm happy. I don't understand what you do, she'd admitted. Your father says well, he says things, but you sound different, stronger. I am stronger. I'm proud of you, she'd whispered, like she was sharing a secret. I don't say it enough, but I am. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, I'm proud. I'd ended the call before she could hear my voice crack. Before she could know that her approval, so small and so late, still meant something to the girl inside the ghost. My secure phone buzzed. Another mission. Another chance to be extraordinary in silence. As I geared up, I caught my reflection in the armory mirror. Scarred. Lean. Eyes that had seen too much and would see more. I looked nothing like the girl who'd begged for scraps of her father's attention. I didn't need their applause anymore. Every step I took, every life I saved, every record I shattered, They were prayers in a language only I understood. Offerings at an altar of self-respect that no one else could desecrate. Because when you've been forged in silence, you don't need the world to hear you ring. You just need to know your own true sound. The helicopter blades started spinning, calling me to another mission that would never be celebrated. Perfect. The email that changed everything arrived on a Thursday. Your presence is requested at a Department of Defense ceremony, December 15th, 1400 hours, Arlington National Cemetery. Business formal. RSVP required. Every military family in the DC area had received one. Standard invite for standard ceremonies, another general's retirement, another monument dedication, another day of brass and protocol. Dad had forwarded it to the family group chat I'd been removed from years ago. Danny kept me informed. Another dog and pony show, open bar at least. They had no idea. I stood in the ready room, dress blues immaculate, every ribbon precisely placed. The Medal of Honor sat heavy in its case, the one I'd finally agreed to accept after Sudan became impossible to keep classified. Too many witnesses. Too many saved lives talking to reporters. Command had given me a choice: accept the recognition or watch them create a fictional male operator to credit. 5 minutes, Commander Mitchell, the aide announced. Commander. The promotion had come through that morning, along with restoration of my birth name. Sarah Mitchell. No more hiding behind Mom's maiden name. Today I would own every syllable. Master Chief Williams checked my ribbons one final time. You ready for this? No. Good. Means you're human. He straightened my warfare pins. Your old man's out there. Front row, left side. Looks like he swallowed a lemon. You looked? Had to see the famous Captain Mitchell, the one who said women don't belong on the range. Williams smiled cold. Bet he's about to reevaluate that position. Through the curtain, I could hear the crowd gathering. Hundreds of people, brass from every branch, media with cameras and hunger for heroes. And somewhere in that sea of faces, my family sat ignorant of why they'd been specifically requested to attend. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Defense's voice boomed across the cemetery. We gather today to honor extraordinary valor in service to our nation. This was it. The moment where two worlds, the one that dismissed me and the one where I'd become legendary, would violently collide. Lieutenant Sarah Blake, now Commander Sarah Mitchell, represents the finest traditions of naval special warfare. On June 15th, in an operation that has only recently been declassified. I closed my eyes, remembering that day. The embassy compound in Sudan. 43 hostages, including the entire UN peacekeeping delegation. 12 hostile operators. One way in that everyone said was impossible, except I'd made a career of impossible. Infiltrated alone through underground tunnels thought to be impassable, neutralized multiple threats, and established a defensive position that allowed for successful extraction of all hostages. Despite being wounded 3 times, Commander Mitchell held her position for 17 hours until relief arrived. The aide touched my shoulder. Ma'am, time. I stepped through the curtain into blinding December sunlight. The crowd rose as one, except for a figure in the front row who seemed frozen. Dad. His face cycling through confusion, recognition, disbelief. The president stood at the podium, flanked by the Joint Chiefs. As I approached, she rendered a salute that I returned with 40 years of muscle memory. The same salute I'd practiced in my bedroom mirror at 12, desperate for someone to see me worthy of it. Commander Sarah Mitchell, the SecDef continued, his voice carrying across the silent cemetery. Call sign Ghost has completed 67 confirmed special operations missions across 14 countries. She holds the record for longest confirmed sniper kill by a female operator. She is fluent in 7 languages. Her actions have directly saved over 300 lives. Each word landed like artillery in the front row. I could see Mom's hand covering her mouth, Claire gripping her husband's arm, Danny half standing, face pale, and Dad looked like someone had reached into his chest and rearranged his entire cardiovascular system. She is, the president said, taking the podium, quite simply the most decorated female special operations commander in United States history. And today we recognize her with our nation's highest military honor. The Medal of Honor is heavier than you'd think. The president placed it around my neck with gentle hands, whispering, "Your country owes you a debt we can never repay." Just doing my job, ma'am. No, she said firmly, loud enough for the microphones to catch. You redefined the job. The applause started slow, uncertain, then built to thunder. But I wasn't watching the crowd. I was watching the front row, where my family sat in various stages of shock. Dad's hands trembled in his lap, the great Captain Mitchell reduced to speechlessness by his failure of a daughter. Then from the back, a small voice, "Mommy, is she a real soldier?" A girl, maybe 7, pointing at me with wonder. Her mother tried to shush her, but I raised a hand. "Yes," I said into the sudden quiet. "I'm a real soldier." The girl broke free from her mother's hand, ran down the aisle. Security moved to intercept, but I waved them off. She stopped inches from me, staring up with the same expression I'd worn looking at Dad's uniforms. Can I be like you?" I knelt, bringing us eye level, removed my cover, placed it on her small head. "You already are. You just have to remember it when people tell you otherwise. My dad says girls can't be soldiers." My dad said the same thing. I glanced at the front row, met those familiar eyes. Dads don't always know everything. The crowd laughed, nervous, unsure energy. The girl saluted, my cover sliding over her eyes. I returned it solemnly, then stood as her mother collected her with whispered apologies. "Commander Mitchell," a reporter called out. "Your father is Captain Robert Mitchell, correct? Also, a decorated naval officer?" The question hung in the air like a white phosphorus flare. Bright, dangerous, illuminating everything. "Yes," I said simply. "He served with distinction." "How does it feel, having surpassed his achievements? You've accomplished more in 8 years than—" "I don't measure my service against anyone else's." I cut him off. "Every person who wears the uniform makes sacrifices. Every person who serves with honor deserves respect. Even the ones who couldn't see past their own limitations. Even the ones who tried to make their fears my ceiling." The ceremony continued, more speeches, more recognition. But I'd already had my moment. Not the medal or the salutes or the validation of a nation's gratitude, it was the look in that little girl's eyes. The same look I'd had before the world tried to teach me to see smaller. As the formal portion ended and the crowd began to mingle, I saw him approaching, Dad. Walking like a man navigating a minefield of his own making. "Sarah?" "Commander Mitchell," I corrected quietly, not cruel, just clear. He flinched. "Commander Mitchell, I had no idea. I know. The things you've done, they said you've saved hundreds of lives. 342 as of last count." He stopped, started again. I was wrong. They were words I dreamed of hearing, fantasized about, built entire scenarios around. But standing there, looking at this man who'd made me feel so small, I realized something. I didn't need them anymore. "I know," I said again, then turned to accept congratulations from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Dad stood there, uncertain, diminished, the war hero reduced to a bystander at his daughter's triumph. Part of me, the 12-year-old still inside, wanted to comfort him. Tell him it was okay. Take whatever scraps of approval he was finally willing to offer. But Commander Mitchell had missions to plan and lives to save. The uniform I wore had never been about earning his salute. It had been about earning my own. And today, in front of everyone who'd said I couldn't, I stood as proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rising so far above the people who tried to bury you that they need binoculars just to see your shadow. A young naval officer approached, nervous but determined. "Commander, I'm supposed to start Bud S next month. I'm terrified I'll wash out. Any advice?" I looked at her, saw my younger self in her eager eyes and smiled. "Yeah, don't let anyone else's limitations become your own." In the front row, my father sat back down heavily, staring at his hands. He'd finally seen me, and I no longer needed him to. The reception tent beckoned 50 yards away, white canvas and forced conversation, where medals became talking points and service became small talk. I could already see the clusters forming, brass comparing war stories, spouses comparing duty stations, politicians comparing photo opportunities. I turned and walked the opposite direction. "Commander Mitchell?" The aide hurried after me, clipboard clutched. "The reception is starting without me." I kept walking, dress blues catching the afternoon light. "Give my regrets." But the secretary wanted to introduce you to. The secretary has my direct line. He can call if he needs me." Behind us, the crowd buzzed with confusion. Where was the guest of honor going? Didn't she understand the protocol, the networking opportunities, the chances to leverage this moment into something more? They didn't understand. This was never about networking. It was about breaking free. My team waited by the access road. Williams, Rodriguez, Chen, and Tucker. Still in their dress uniforms but already loosening ties, ready to shed the ceremony like snakeskin. The black Suburban idled behind them, engine purring promises of elsewhere. Thought you might pull a ghost, Williams said, using my call sign as a verb. Reception looked painful. My pain tolerance has limits. Sarah, the voice cracked across the cemetery like a rifle shot. I stopped, but didn't turn, could feel him approaching. Expensive shoes on sacred ground, breathing heavy with desperation or age or both. Sarah, please. Just give me 5 minutes. My team tensed, hands moving to habits formed in hostile territory. I raised a finger. Wait, let him come. Let him say whatever words he'd rehearsed on that long walk from his front row seat to this moment of reckoning. He rounded in front of me, blocking the path. The great Captain Mitchell, reduced to ambushing his daughter between headstones. His dress whites, worn despite retirement, despite irrelevance, looked costume-like now. Theater for a play that had already ended. I need to say something. No, I said quietly, you don't. I was wrong, so wrong, about everything. About you. I see that now, and I... Stop, he flinched at the command voice. The same tone that had ordered men into fire and out of danger. The voice that had negotiated with terrorists and whispered courage to hostages. My voice. Not his. You don't get to apologize now, I continued, each word precise. You don't get to claim understanding you didn't earn. You don't get to make this moment about your redemption. I'm your father. You're a man who shared disappointment, nothing more. The words should have been cruel, should have been weapons, but they came out clinical, like a sniper calling wind speed. Just facts, just truth stripped of emotional weight. His face crumpled. Pride and pain and something that might have been grief. I don't know how to fix this. You don't. Some things break permanently. They become different things. I gestured to my ribbons, my rank, myself. I became a different thing. I'm proud of you. The words hung between us like smoke from a distant fire. Once they would have meant everything. The 12-year-old inside me would have gathered them up, pressed them like flowers in a book of might-have-beens. Commander Mitchell just nodded. I know. That's all. I'm trying to connect, to understand, to make amends. Dad, I used the title for the last time, watched it register. You're apologizing to a ghost. The daughter who needed your approval died years ago. Killed her myself. Had to become this. I spread my hands, indicating everything. The medal, the rank, the woman who'd saved lives he'd never bothered to imagine. Your pride, your shame, your regret, they're all just noise now. Then what am I supposed to do? Live with it, like I did. A small hand tugged at my jacket. The girl from the ceremony had escaped again, this time clutching a phone. Her mother chased after, mortified. I'm so sorry, Commander, it's fine. I knelt to the girl's level. You want a picture? She nodded, suddenly shy. My dad, he watched the ceremony on his phone. He's deployed. He said, you're why I can be anything. Your dad's right. I positioned her for the photo, her mother's phone trembling in grateful hands. But you were always going to be anything. I just made sure they couldn't stop you. The camera clicked. The girl threw her arms around my neck, whispered, Thank you for being brave. Thank you, I whispered back, for reminding me why. She ran back to her mother, already pulling up the photo to see. In that moment, I understood something fundamental. Every brutal training evolution, every impossible mission, every scar earned in silence, they'd all been for her. For the girls who would come after. For the ones who needed to see it was possible. Dad still stood there, diminished and desperate. Behind him, my family had emerged from the reception tent, Mom wringing her hands, Claire clutching her husband, Danny in his perfect lieutenant commander uniform looking lost. I have to go, I told them all, and none of them. Will you? Mom's voice broke. Will you ever come home? I am home. I gestured to my team, my Suburban, my life beyond their reach. I've been home for years. Tucker opened the vehicle door. My team formed up, automatic protection detail, even here, even now. As I climbed in, Dad made one last attempt. Sarah, I loved you. I didn't know how to show it. I paused, one foot in the vehicle, turned back to meet his eyes, the same blue as mine, but clouded now with cataracts and consequences. I know, I said simply. It just wasn't enough. The door closed with soft finality. No slam, no drama, just the quiet ending of something that had been dying for decades. As we pulled away, I watched in the side mirror. Dad stood frozen, a statue in dress whites surrounded by the living. Mom reached for his arm. He didn't move. Couldn't move. The weight of realization had finally found its target. "You good, Commander?" Williams asked from the driver's seat. Yeah, and I was. The 12-year-old girl inside had finally stopped looking over her shoulder for approval that would never come. "Yeah, I'm good." The cemetery faded. The crowds dispersed. The moment passed into memory, classified like so many others. But this one I'd remember. Not for the medal or the recognition or the vindication of a nation's highest honor. I'd remember it for the silence. His silence. The speechless quiet of a man who'd finally understood the cost of underestimating a daughter's dreams. Rodriguez handed me a tablet. New mission brief. Wheels up in 6 hours. I scrolled through the details, already shifting back to the work that mattered. Lives to save. Records to break. Glass ceilings to shatter so thoroughly that the girls coming behind me would never know they'd existed. In the rearview mirror, Arlington grew small and distant. Just another coordinate on a map. Just another place I'd been. I didn't need his apology. Never had. His silence, heavy and complete and permanent, was the only recognition I'd ever really wanted. Because silence, unlike words, couldn't be taken back. And some echoes were meant to haunt. The Suburban merged into traffic, carrying me back to the shadows where I belonged. Where I'd chosen to belong. Where I'd earned the right to belong. Behind us, a father stood alone in a cemetery, finally understanding what he'd lost. Ahead of us, the mission waited. I smiled and got to work. Every dawn at 500, I run the same beach. Not because I have to anymore. My qualification times were set years ago. Times that still stand as records, benchmarks that instructors mention in hushed tones to candidates who think they're special. I run because the rhythm reminds me who I am when the world is sleeping and there's no one left to prove anything to. Today, the sunrise paints the Atlantic in shades of amber and blood. Fitting colors for a warrior's meditation. My shadow stretches behind me, long and solitary, and I remember another shadow, smaller, desperate, always trying to fit inside someone else's outline. That girl feels like fiction now. A story I heard once about someone who shared my name but not my scars. The beach is empty, except for the gulls and ghosts. This stretch of sand belongs to Naval Special Warfare, where But-S candidates ring the bell, where dreams go to die, where legends are separated from lies. I've seen grown men cry here, seen them break, seen them discover they were ordinary after all. I stop at the bell, running my fingers across its salt-pitted surface. The brass is worn smooth by the hands of those who quit, who discovered their limits, who chose survival over transformation. No shame in it. Most people aren't meant to become weapons. Thought I'd find you here. Admiral Chen materializes from the morning mist, a trick he's perfected over 40 years of being where he's not supposed to be. He's in civilian clothes, retirement suit, but he still moves like a predator. Sir. Old habits. Just Chen now. Or Mike, if you can manage it. He stands beside me, studying the bell. Ever wonder what would have happened if you'd rung out? No, liar. I smile. Liar. He's right. In the darkest moments, bleeding out in Kandahar, hallucinating from dehydration in Somalia, bones broken in places I couldn't name, I'd wondered, what if I'd chosen the easy path? What if I'd become the daughter Dad wanted? Married well, lived small, died unremarkable. I think about it, I admit, then I remember that easy things don't echo. Speaking of echoes, he pulls out a folder, unmarked and thick. Interesting report crossed my desk yesterday. Well, my kitchen table. Retirement's boring. I take the folder, already knowing what's inside. Intelligence summaries, mission reports. My name redacted, but my work undeniable. 3 terrorist cells disrupted. A genocide prevented. A peace treaty salvaged from the edge of war. That's 6 months of work, Chen says quietly. Most operators don't achieve that in a career. Most operators don't have my motivation, which is. I close the folder, hand it back. Silence. He raises an eyebrow. Not theirs, I clarify. Mine. The silence when you've exceeded every expectation, including your own, when there's no one left to prove wrong because you've proven yourself right, when the only voice that matters is the one in your head and it finally has nothing left to say. That's what drives you? Silence? It's what frees me. We watch the sun climb higher, burning off the marine layer. In an hour, Bud S Class 367 will be here, running in formation, instructors screaming about their inadequacy. Some will ring out today, others tomorrow. A few will survive to earn their tridents. Join the brotherhood that includes sisters now. I'm recommending you for Task Force Commander, Chen says casually like he's commenting on the weather. Tier 1. Full operational control. Your own team, your own missions, your own legacy. The 12-year-old inside me, the one I can never fully kill, gasps. Task Force Commander. The kind of position Dad had dreamed of but never achieved. The kind of authority reserved for legends. I'll need time to think. No, you won't, he smiles. You already know what you'll say, just like you knew at 18, at 21, at every impossible crossroads. You don't know how to say no to becoming more. He's right. The decision was made before he asked. Made the moment I chose transformation over acceptance. Made every time I got up instead of staying down. When do I start? Monday. Assuming you can stop haunting this beach long enough to lead. He leaves the way he came, silently, suddenly, just Chen, and then no Chen. I'm alone again with the gulls and the ghosts and the girl I used to be. I pull out my phone. The family group chat. Danny secretly includes me and shows 247 unread messages. Claire's pregnancy updates, Mom's prayer requests, Dad's occasional photos from his boat, trying to look content in retirement. I scroll without reading. These dispatches from a world that moves on without me. At the bottom, a new message from Dad. Sent at 300 when old sailors can't sleep and regrets weigh heaviest. Watch the ceremony again. Can't stop watching it. You became everything I was too small to imagine. I'm sorry I couldn't see you, really see you, but I see you now. My thumb hovers over the delete button. The old me would have erased it, added it to the pile of too little too late. But Commander Mitchell, soon-to-be Task Force Commander Mitchell, understands something the angry girl couldn't. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about weight, about choosing what to carry forward and what to leave on the beach with the other ghosts. I type that I know. Then I delete the chat, delete the app, delete the last digital thread connecting me to a life that was never mine to live. Not cruel, just clean. Some stories need endings to become something else. The bell stands silent, waiting for the next class, the next dreamer, the next person who thinks they're special. Most will ring out. That's the nature of becoming exceptional. It requires you to break everything you were to build everything you might be. But a few, a precious few, will discover what I learned in the space between my father's dismissal and my nation's salute. Honor isn't inherited. It isn't given. It isn't even earned, really. It's forged in the moments when you could quit, but don't. When you could hate, but choose indifference. When you could destroy, but decide to build. The real revenge, the refined kind, the kind that lasts, isn't about making them see they were wrong. It's about reaching a place where their opinion becomes archaeology. Interesting once, maybe, but irrelevant to the empire you've built from their ashes. I start running again, shadows stretching ahead now toward whatever comes next. Task Force Commander, leader of leaders, architect of impossible missions. The titles stack like ribbons on my chest, but they're not the victory. The victory is this: a woman running alone on a beach, needing nothing from anyone, having become everything they said she couldn't be, and more than she dared dream. They once called me their biggest mistake, their failure, their disappointment. But disappointments don't get presidential salutes. Failures don't break records that stand for decades. Mistakes don't save lives in numbers that require classification to count. Today, that mistake runs toward a horizon that belongs to her alone, leaving footprints that will last longer than the men who said she didn't belong. Because honor, real honor, is the echo that remains when everyone who doubted you has gone quiet. And I've become the echo. The sun climbs, the tide turns, the bell waits, and I run on, ghost and legend and woman all at once, refined by revenge, into something harder than hate and stronger than spite. Someone who simply doesn't need their permission to exist. If Sarah's story touched something deep inside you, that place where old wounds still whisper and dreams feel too big for the world you're living in, then you're exactly where you belong. Here at Refined Revenge, we believe the greatest revenge isn't served cold. It's served with such grace, such undeniable success, that it transforms pain into power and silence into strength. Every week we share stories of women who refused to shrink, who took the dismissal, the betrayal, the "you'll never be good enough," and alchemized it into gold. Real stories, raw transformations, victories that don't require apologies to be complete. If you've ever been told you're too much, not enough, or wrong for wanting more, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Join our sisterhood of Refined Revenge, because your story of rising, we're waiting to celebrate it. Share this video with someone who needs to remember their power today. Comment below with your own moment of refined revenge. That time you proved them wrong by becoming undeniably right. Remember, the best revenge is a life so well lived that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Welcome to Refined Revenge, where we don't get even, we get elevated. Subscribe now, share your story, join our movement.